welcome to the Let's Get Vulnerable podcast. We have a very special guest with us, my friend, and you guys will love her. She's an amazing, heart-centered business owner, and she has so much good knowledge to share with you just about her own relationship journey. And I'm just really excited to have this conversation. We have Jasmine Jonte. Welcome.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Yes. One thing I'll tell the audience, when I first met Jasmine, I knew that she loved dogs and she loved Tony Robbins. So I was like, okay, we're going to be friends. And I was so right.
It's so true. It's so true. Yeah. I don't even remember where we met or when we met, but I just remember thinking like, oh, she's legit, because you meet people at different business events and everybody's in a different place on their journey. And yeah, when we met, it was like, oh, okay, this is a running partner here. Like,
yes,
we can take things on together, even though our businesses are different,
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I'm so happy to have you. Tell the audience just a little bit about you, where you live and all the fun details.
So I live in Phoenix, Arizona. It's currently 118 degrees here.
Ooh.
Yes. So heat of the summer. And I have a done for you course creation agency called Cre8tion with an 8, Cre8tion. And similar to ghostwriting books, we ghostwrite online programs for experts, authors, speakers, sold out service providers, anybody who needs to create online training, right? And help someone get a result without taking their time to get that client their result. And I super love it. Yeah.
I needed you in 2019 when I was putting off building my program, because that's such a barrier for people, is they just don't know how to make the content. So I love that you just do that for people. It's amazing.
Yeah, we love providing the service. A lot of people are anti-service provider. And I know that because they come to me because they're tired of doing their one-on-ones or whatever it is that they're doing. And they're ready to expand and grow and reach more people and have more impact. But I kind of did the opposite way. I first was doing that and running masterminds and big groups. And then I went into this whole one-on-one service world and I love it. So
I love that you love it, because it's rare. So we need people like you. Absolutely. And Jasmine, tell us about your dog and maybe some exciting personal news.
Well, I will definitely tell you about my dog. How much time do we have? Yeah, so I have a pit bull terrier. Her name is Juniper Olive. And I adopted her when I was in my 3rd year of teaching in Detroit, Michigan. So I taught in the lowest performing school in the country, which is where I learned to teach, right? And so teaching adults the things that we teach now was much simpler than what I was doing in Detroit in my eyes. But I adopted Juniper there, and she was like a miracle to me at the time. I was burnt out. I needed help. I needed love. And she just filled all the gaps, and she's going to be 12 next month.
You and I have this in common, because my golden doodle's turning 11 and I was in grad school, totally burnt out, and I had so much instability in my life. And it was like my dog was my one stable, loving thing in my life. Yep. So I so relate to that.
It was actually a therapist that told me to get her. I was going to therapy and I just needed an excuse to leave the building before 7 p.m. And I was toying with the idea of getting a dog, and she's like, do it, because you'll have to get home and let the dog out. And it became like June became my excuse for everything back when I was working in a toxic environment. I had to leave early because, June's got to go outside. So so therapists doing good things out there.
Amazing. Yeah. Sometimes if we can't set boundaries for ourselves, we'll do it for the things that we love, whether it's our dogs or our kids or other people. So that's great. And tell us about the love in your life.
The love in my life. His name is Brad Hart. How good is that? His last name is Hart.
Sounds like a Hallmark movie, honestly. It's so perfect.
Yes. And we are engaged. We got engaged about 6-7 months ago. So that's really exciting. And our wedding hashtag is Brad Hart's Jasmine, Hart, of course. And yeah, it's very exciting. Did not see this one coming at all. But when it happened, it was one of those moments like, oh, okay, here we are. This is it. Tick that box. Now let's figure out how to be the best lifelong partner, soon to be fiance, soon to be wife, soon to be mom, not that I'm pregnant, but in the future that I can be. So
I love it. I love it. So exciting. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. So there's so many things that we can talk about, Jasmine. Obviously I could talk to you for hours, but I want to kind of just start us off with your own dating story and maybe a little bit about your dating history before you met Brad, and maybe like some of the things that like changed for you in order to meet someone like him and build a relationship.
Yeah, I think, I look at my dating experiences like before Tony Robbins and after Tony Robbins. Like really and truly. It was like before Tony Robbins, I just kind of dated whoever was convenient. If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I was just talking about this, like not having discernment, just dating what was convenient. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. It was like, like your first boyfriend or your first girlfriend, your first partner, it's just, you happen to be in proximity. You both go to the same school. Maybe you're in the same club or the same activity, and there's a little bit of attraction and you go for it, right? And you're a teenager. I don't feel like I like graduated out of that until Tony Robbins. Honestly, if I think about it. And it doesn't mean that these guys were bad by any means. Like they all treated me pretty well. Like I can say I was never in a toxic relationship, and I credit my parents because they have, gosh, like I hope I have their marriage when I'm their age, like it's just a beautiful, beautiful, amazing relationship. So I was never with anybody who was toxic, but it's just not great. It's just convenient, honestly.
Yeah. And obviously I can relate to change my life by going to Tony Robbins, and I have ideas about what it was that made the changes for you. But I'm curious, like from your perspective, like what was it that you did that made the changes?
I remember writing down a list of what I want in a person, like, that dream wish list. And then on the flip side, who do I have to become in order to be with that person? It's an exercise he has in one of his digital programs. It wasn't even at the event, right? It was just a digital program. And I remember I was on a trip in California. I was at some kind of mission. I want to say it was Santa Barbara, maybe. And I was sitting under a tree and I'm doing this digital program, and I just like write my list. And that became the focus, and that became the vision board, and who I needed to become became more of my focus. I didn't even really put myself out there in terms of dating apps and going on dates with a lot of guys. Looking back, I might have found Brad sooner had I done that, but I didn't. I wasn't really in any rush. And no kidding, I found that list after Brad and I got together, like 6 months afterward. And he is every single thing on that list. Like the first thing at the very top is clean in all caps, because I was with an ex who was just a hot mess all the time. It was so annoying. And Brad is like way cleaner than me. Like it's a constant joke.
I love this.
Because I was looking for someone like all caps clean, and he is always picking up after me,
Oh my gosh. All of a sudden, Jasmine, I'm like the time you and I've shared a motel room. I'm like, oh my gosh, was I cleaning up for Jasmine?
No, you're totally fine. I am actually, I learned that, I thought that I had high standards. I don't. He has high standards when it comes to cleanliness. Yeah.
Gotcha. So clean. And then what else was on that list?
Healthy, kind, silly. And I think a lot of these things, I wrote them down because it was missing in other relationships, right? It's like that idea of like, what you don't want before you know what you do want.
Yeah.
So a lot of what I wrote down was the opposite, because I was with someone who was, like I said, he was messy. And so I wanted someone clean. I was with someone who was really laid back and chill. I wanted someone ambitious. And then I'd been with people before who were too serious for me. And so I wrote down silly and playful. And it was interesting because if I look at, all the relationships before him, there was something on the list that even if they met some of the criteria, which happened after Tony, right? As I made this list, went to Tony Robbins, and then people on the list were meeting more and more of the criteria, but they just didn't get all the way there. And then with Brad, he went all the way there.
That's so beautiful. What I love about this is the part about you saying, who do I have to become in order to attract this partner? And, that's so much of what my work is focused on. And that's what we have control over, right?
Absolutely. I did so much work on masculine, feminine, because I'm a business owner. And so much of my business is operated from this masculine place, which isn't bad. It really serves me in business a lot. But then it kind of, if I look at my relationships that didn't work out, it was because I took that into the relationship. Whereas here, it's a little more balanced, I guess. I'm not perfect by any stretch, but.
And as you're saying that, I think one of the things I see a lot is we operate with our masculine in relationships out of fear and its desire to control. And a lot of times that can just be connected to maybe it's past experiences or, not really knowing your full worth and not being totally clear on what you want. So there's fear. So it's amazing the shift to the feminine also involves creating safety with intimacy.
Yeah. And it was like, I had to do that with myself first, which is why I had a huge lull in dating. I mean, there's probably 3 years there where I didn't really date anybody. I just worked on me. And if someone happened to come along and ask me out, I'd go out. And if it worked out, okay. And if it didn't, it didn't. But I really just put my intention into myself, my health, my business, and said, okay, this is my season for me. And I'm going to take this season for me so that when he shows up, I'm ready. And if I'm ready, if I enter a season of wanting to pursue something more intentionally, then I can do that. But at the time, I just felt I didn't have enough bandwidth, capacity. So focus on me and do me and also be ready. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I do see that a lot. I'll talk about it as your cocoon era. You're in your cocoon, your relationship cocoon. And one of the words I'm taking out of what you shared is standards, which is such a Tony Robbins thing of, raise your standards. And do you feel like that was part of it too, is kind of giving yourself that permission to have those standards?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it wasn't like a black and white, one day I didn't feel worthy and the next day I felt worthy. Right? Because if I hear that question, I think oh, what was the light switch? And honestly, I don't think it was. I think it was more of just a continual evolution. Because once I entered the dating world again, I mean, there was a couple situations where I was not living into that vision of who I needed to be. And so I stumbled for a while before then it kind of got better from there. And my next couple of relationships were better and better. And then, culminated with Brad. So yeah, I think it was a gradual permission giving rather than just a stark, on Wednesday, I didn't feel like I, gave myself permission. On Thursday, I did. It was very much and even today, which is really weird, is I still am giving myself permission to raise the standards and still evolving to become better. And both Brad and I then rise to them.
That's beautiful. Yeah. It really speaks to the power of identity development. And I think you and I have done personal development long enough to know that that's a never ending process. And as your actions and behaviors match up in alignment with your inner self and your standards, then that identity gets like more and more confirmed over time, right?
Yep. Yep. Yeah. It's that identity piece. Even just like having words, like, now I'm playing with the word wife.
Yes.
Like, what the heck does that even mean to
What
be?
does that? What does
Like,
that mean to you?
like, what is
Wife?
my identity as a wife, and I'm still figuring it out. Like, but then it'll be mom, and then it'll be, mom of teenagers, and then it'll be grandma, and then, like all these different identities we have over life. But the one I'm playing with right now is wife. I just bought myself a sweatshirt that said like future Mrs. Hart wife or something. I'm like, okay, what's that
Beautiful.
gonna feel like to like wear it, the
I
actual
hope,
word.
yeah, I hope the audience takes this point about it's like you never stop with identity because you are always growing, always evolving. And to take this next step in your life, in your relationship with Brad, and ask yourself that really powerful question of who is Jasmine as an incredible wife, right? Like, not just like, okay, I'm a wife, but like, who am I as my highest and best self as a wife? I think that's like a very powerful question.
Yeah. I'll get back to you on my response.
I can't wait. I can't wait. I know you're gonna do incredible. It's amazing. Um, what do you think someone who is listening to this and maybe they're going on dates and they're not having great experiences and they're kind of like what you said, it's like out of convenience and they're like sick of the dating apps and just super, super frustrated. Like, what would you tell them to do first?
Take a break.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the same, I would say, on any area of life. Is if you're on that frustration wheel, then something needs to change. And honestly, we usually don't know what to change until we give ourselves some space. Even in the gym, like if you've ever just been doing the same kind of routine for a while and you just start to get frustrated and you start to hate going to the gym and you don't even want to buy new workout clothes anymore, like whatever it is. And then you think, okay, let me just take a break. Even just giving yourself the space to think, oh, maybe I want to try this other thing. And then the excitement comes back. So
I love
maybe
that.
just give yourself a break.
Yeah, no, that's such a good place to start. And I think the next step then is to get clear on this identity piece and to really do some, do the inner work, do the work on yourself, because obviously you are the foundation for whatever relationship you're going to attract. So you want to make sure that you're putting your best self forward and you're attracting that ideal partner. So very good. You and I don't get to talk about these things. I love it. We're going into new territory.
It's fun. Let's get
Yes.
vulnerable.
Yes, you're getting vulnerable. So good. So Jasmine, you and your partner are both ambitious. And it's one of the things I love about you, that you are one of the other driven female business owners that I know, where it's like, yeah, you mean business. You're serious. Like, you're legit. I'm legit.
Yeah.
You're legit. Right. And
Yeah.
like, I adore that about you. And you have a partner that is the same way. So how do you navigate two highly ambitious people in one relationship?
It's not without its challenges. That's for sure. I will say though, I've been with people before who aren't ambitious. And for me, that was harder. So, they say choose your hard. And every time Brad and I have a scuffle over competing ambitions, or the fact that we're both pushing for something, or the fact that he's going really hard on a launch right now and I'm not getting everything I might want out of the relationship because he doesn't have time, and vice versa, I think, oh, well, this is way better than what it could have been. So I feel like the point I'm trying to make there is when things get hard because there's two really ambitious people in the relationship, be grateful that there's two ambitious people in the relationship, period. That's been my go-to to kind of reframe when things happen. And I also think that we're pretty good with boundaries in our business. And I mean like our own boundaries in our business. So there's certain times that we're on, there's certain times that we're off. We communicate with each other if something's going on outside of those. Like Brad had a weekend meeting and he's like, hey, 12:30 on Saturday, you cool if I go to this meeting? Like, is that good? And I'm like, yeah, man, go do your thing. And I sat on the couch with Juniper for a little snuggle time, right? So it's just, I feel like that's another piece is if we didn't have that, it wouldn't work as well as it does.
Yeah, the boundaries so that your time is your time together.
Yes, yes. But one other thing on my list was mastermind partner at the drop of a hat. Like I wanted a partner in my life who he's upstairs right now. He's above me. I can hear him walking around. I could just go upstairs and be like, yo, I'm having a problem. Like you got 5 minutes. And he could be like, yeah, what's up? And we could help each other solve problems. Lo and behold, Morgan, you know this, he teaches masterminds. So he's literally the mastermind guy. I did not mean to manifest the mastermind guy, but mastermind at the drop of a hat, like check, on that box. So
I love it.
Like there's pros to it as well, right? Is like, it's great for when you have challenges in business to know that, your relationship can also support you from a really intelligent place and not just throwing suggestions against the wall.
Yeah. And I think there's such a lesson here in compatibility. Like a person listening to this, they might not be a business owner, but let's say they love to travel, right?
Yeah.
And it's going to make their life so much easier if they're with someone who shares that love and someone who they can plan that trip to Rome with and not stress about it. Because I think what you and I would agree is like, of course, it's possible to be with someone where you don't share the same, loves or the same like passions in life, but it just makes it a lot easier is what it sounds like for you.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's other things, like you said, that we don't really have in common. I love to go to like music and shows, and he likes to only go to shows where he knows all the words to the music. And so
wow, that would be very few shows for me.
Well, and of course he likes stuff like, I don't know, 9 Inch Nails and like hard rock stuff and that I don't like, but it's fine, because I'll either just go by myself or go with a girlfriend. Like I don't need him to be with me to meet that need. Whereas the business thing is much more higher on that priority list of things that we could be compatible on. Like that was very high.
I love that you're talking about this because I always say you have to remember your partner cannot be everything to you. And you have to pick what's the important thing or the few things that we really need to have in common. So you knew yourself well enough to know that it needed to be business for you.
Mm-hmm. And Tony Robbins and dogs.
Hey, I love it. I love it. Those are all great things. What about in terms of any tips or tricks or, I think you and I both are big into like having routines, things that we do, anything that you two do as a couple that's really supportive to your partnership?
This is a bit I don't know if this will apply to everybody on who's listening, but because we're in business and because we both work from home, we're kind of each other's office partners too, right? It's like we're each other's partners, but we're also the only other person in the office with each other. And so anytime he has a big win during the day, or I have a big win, or sometimes it's a small win during the day, we'll run up or down the stairs and like have a little dance party. Now, it can't happen every time because obviously if he came downstairs right now, as I'm recording this with you, he would peek open the door and he would see that I'm busy and he would close the door real quietly and he would save it for later, right? there's, probably a couple times a week where it works out and he does something awesome or I do something awesome and we celebrate each other. So it's a very small ritual, but it makes a big impact.
Well, what I love about this is that anyone can do this, because the takeaway is making that time to celebrate each other and focusing on making sure that each other feel seen for the wins, the big wins, the small wins. I think that's so important in creating, I call it relationship culture. Like every relationship has a culture, right? And you have a culture of celebrating wins.
Yeah, we do. He even has a gong, like a legitimate gong that he likes to ring sometimes.
I love it. That's amazing. That's so good. So good. Well, is there anything else, I guess, just because obviously, a lot of people listening to this, they're going to hear about your relationship and you're engaged and they're going to think, okay, she's got a lot of things figured out, which is true. Is there anything else that you would want to say to someone who's looking for their person and maybe like feeling a little bit hopeless?
It's kind of along the lines of let's get vulnerable, because at the very beginning of Brad and I's relationship, we both come from the Tony Robbins world, right? So we had that shared language. We had those shared experiences, even though we didn't go to events together. We had been in some of the same rooms. We had seen the same content. So that gave us a foundation. And when we actually started dating and then kind of became boyfriend, girlfriend, or whatever you want to call it, we literally swapped vision boards. Like, this was very, very, very early on. And he was like, here's what I'm looking for. And I'm like, here's what I'm looking for. And it's scary to be that early on and not know if you're going to check off someone's list, and vice versa, because then you're thinking, oh, it's over before it even began. But that is the thing that we credit a lot of our success to, is we knew from the beginning that this could work. And so then we doubled down on the effort that it took to make it work when it wasn't working. So we joke that we arranged our own marriage. Like, we joke about that, because before we were even attracted to each other, we knew on a foundational level we wanted the same things, and we kind of fit each other's needs.
I love so much about this. There's a lot of a willingness to be vulnerable in that, obviously. So you have to be brave to share. And then it's this idea of, hey, this is the vision I have for my life, and I want you to see it. And then you saw the vision for his life. And I think to know that even though they're not identical, that there's enough in common that we could potentially create a beautiful shared vision, right? Like that is such a, I would say, could help you create secure attachment, which is what you're talking about. Like, knowing that on a foundational level, we can work and that we do want some of the same things, that does allow you to really invest more in a relationship. So that's great.
Yeah. One more thing I'll share, if I can.
Please. Yeah.
Is that when I met Brad, I was 29, and now I'm 32. We'll get married when I'm 33. I probably won't have kids until I'm 35. And everybody comes into this at different ages and whatnot, but I remember by the time Brad and I had gotten together, all the people in my life were coupled off. Like, I was kind of the last one. My younger brother had been married for like 3 years by the time I met Brad. My best friend had been married for a year by the time I met Brad. And I thought I was trying to catch up, when actually it's like worked out in the best way for me, because we're both, he was 35, I was 29. So there's a bit of an age gap, but we both knew ourselves so well, and we were so independent that we're generally pretty reliant on ourselves. And so having this other person feels like overflow and not like like, I need someone to help me take care of myself. It's like, no, like I am a grown ass woman and I know how to take care of me. And I've been doing it for a while. And you, my friend, are like a blessing of overflow. So if you're in that boat where you're like, oh my gosh, I got to catch up, like it's going to actually work out great for you.
Yeah, that's so great. It makes me think about the term interdependence, right? Where you can rely on you. And then, of course, having a partner, you can rely on someone else. And creating secure attachment, creating a great relationship is so much easier when you have that relationship with you and you know that you can rely on you. And I always say, yeah, you're not trying to fill a void, but a great partner is a multiplier to what you have already created in your life. And what a good reminder about forget the timelines. Like we all want to compare ourselves. I mean, I did the same thing. Growing up in Montana, I was supposed to be married by 25 and have kids, right? Like that was the expectation, but that would have been a terrible life for me between you and I. The person I would have chose at 25. Oh,
and look at you now.
Right?
Yes. Yes, queen.
So important to just honor your own timeline and realize you becoming the version of you who brings in the kind of relationship you want. That's going to happen on its own timeline. And that's the way it's meant to happen.
100%.
Yes. I love it. Can't wait for you to be a mom too. I know you and I have that in common of like just the excitement of that chapter. It's terrifying, but exciting.
Oh my God. Totally terrifying.
It is. I had my niece and nephew for a week by myself. They're 4 and 6.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
And I was like having to clean up after them. And they both like had an accident at the same time. So I was like, they're running around the house half dressed and poop's probably everywhere. And I was like, okay, this is a crash course.
See, I taught kindergarten, first grade. So I feel like when they're in that like elementary school age range, like I'm going to crush it. But like anything from newborn to age 4, I'm totally terrified. I have no idea. And my goddaughter, she's 5-6 months right now. And so I kind of am getting a little bit of a preview. And so like, God bless Ellen, my best friend. If she can do it and she paves the way for me, I can do it. But it's still just, because you get to hand them back at the end of the week, right? It's like, okay, sis, take your kids back.
Absolutely. Exactly. Yeah. And the good thing is you have lots of people in your life who you can go to, and you have this partnership that you've built. And I think being intentional and making sure that you are building a life with someone where you have those shared things that you want, and obviously family, that was one of the top ones on my list. I'm sure for you too. And like knowing that you have someone that also wants that in their life, that makes it just feel so much better. Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing this with us. I know one fun topic that I've never talked about before on the podcast that you and I just talked about right before. We're going to go there today. We're going to talk about prenups.
We are.
Yeah.
This is breaking. No one has got me to talk about this yet.
Ooh,
Dr. Morgan. So
I love it.
Yes.
So yeah, let's talk about, I think more and more successful women, career women, we're going into marriage and we're wanting a prenup. So just tell me about your experience with that.
Well, like I mentioned, when we got together, I was 29, Brad was 35. So he's much older than me. He has worked really hard and done really well in his space. And when we swapped those vision boards and we said, okay, could this actually be a thing? And we're in the process of arranging our own marriage. And I said, I want to be married. And then I want to have children. Like the order was really important to me. And I know for some people it's not as important. I totally respect that. But for me, it was very important. And he said, okay, but I would need a prenup. So he's been super clear since day one that this is something that he needed. And at the time I was like, well, I'd have to figure out all that entails, but I think I generally get it. And like, okay, right? Like, okay, all right, I can do that. Because remember, I'm 29, I can take care of myself. I'm independent, like all of that. And it's been a journey. It's been a journey because then you actually start to do life together. And we bought a house together. And, some like finances start to be commingled. And then it's like, okay, we're engaged. Now I actually have to call a prenup lawyer and figure out what this is actually all about, because you have an idea of something in your head, but you don't actually know the granular details. And at the end of the day, a prenup is a contract. So it is black and white details. In the event of divorce, this is how this is going to go down. Now, one thing I didn't know is that child's custody and like, what's it called? Child support, you cannot put that in a prenuptial agreement. So that was a new learning for me. And that kind of made me feel a little bit better because who knows what's going to happen with the kids, right? It's sort of like this whole big question mark. So I felt like, confirmed in that way. And then with everything else, there's just a series of questions that you have to answer with how much do you want to be separate versus what do you want to make, community property. And I should mention that every state does this differently. So even like, we live in Arizona, we get a prenup here. If we move to Florida, it's governed by Arizona law. And so it's like this whole thing, right? But yeah, what I've kind of come around to is like, this is something that he really needs to feel safe and secure in the relationship. It's something that I can definitely provide, that we can come to these decisions together. And honestly, like it's made us have conversations that I'm so glad we're having before we get married. Because I feel like a lot of people, they just go right into marriage, like thinking I'm going to do it how my parents did it. But what if your two sets of parents did it completely differently?
So true. Yeah. And I love that you talked about this is what he needed to feel safe, because that's how I look at this of what's required to create secure attachment. And what we find is that when there's a lot of clarity and boundaries and, just open communication, that actually creates more reassurance. So in a way, it's like this total transparency, right? Everything's out in the open. And the research would point to that actually can support you in having a better marriage and hopefully even preventing a separation, right? So I don't know. I just think, I know this is a really touchy topic for people, but it's important to look at what's right for you and your partner. And at the end of the day, what is going to help you feel most secure in the relationship.
Yeah. And for me personally, entering the relationship, I was like, I don't feel like I need a prenup to feel safe or secure. But again, it was something that he really needed. And then I started asking more questions. I talked to our mentor about it, and she, being a woman that's she's probably 10 years older than us, 10, 15 years. She has a lot more business experience than me. Like she's seen more than I have. She's been through marriage and divorce and, remarriage and all the things. And from her viewpoint, she is super pro prenup. And it almost like gave me permission to not just do it for him, but like, maybe I should do this for me too. Like maybe this is the best decision for me. And I just hadn't thought about it from that way. Right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And gosh, money is so vulnerable to be able to talk about money and assets and
debt.
And debt. And oh man. And I do think what a great way to create that relationship culture of just honesty, transparency. This is what's mine. This is what's yours. And I think, couples and finances, obviously that's one of the things that leads to divorce a lot of times. And if you can start your marriage off where both of you know exactly where you're at, that can be so helpful. And I think there's a lot of research that says you still want to be able to operate as two individuals financially and have shared finances. That it's great to do both and to be open about, hey, this is shared and this is separate.
Yep.
And it goes back to attachment theory and interdependence, this idea of two individuals who come together and co-create something, but you don't lose yourself as an individual.
Yep. His, hers, and ours.
Yes.
And honestly, the ours account, you know, the OURS account really did like change some things for our relationship, because then it was like every time we were going out for coffee or dinner, it wasn't like who's buying. It was just like, we're paying, you know?
I love that.
So yeah, his, hers, and ours for sure.
I love that. Thank you for being so open about this. I think more people need to hear women, especially, talk about this.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. Just like when you go into business events, Brad and I will go together and people will assume I work inside of his business.
Oh,
It's the same thing with lawyers, you know, like you talk to the lawyers and they assume I'm going to want to get what I can from his better performing business. And it's just, it's fascinating, you know, like I understand why they would think that, because statistically there's evidence, but it's also like that's just, you know, a percentage of the whole
2023.
Here.
Come on.
Like, let's go now. So yeah, I think it's a bit of but we'll get there. Just keep on keeping on, ladies.
Yes. I mean, there are so many, I have the privilege of working with so many successful women. And one of the things is they've felt really safe putting time into their careers, and they build up these big, beautiful careers, and the relationship feels like the more vulnerable thing. And they're more scared of the relationship. And I think a prenup is just one of those things that can help you create more safety, because there's this huge lie in society, which I know you and I have felt, which is that you can't have a great relationship and a great career, that if you're the woman, you're going to have to sacrifice and you're going to have to step into that, you know, girlfriend, wife role in order to have the great relationship. But, you know, you and I are both examples of, hey, you can have it all. You can have an amazing career. You can have a great relationship. You can have a partner that cheers you on in your career and celebrates your success. And if there are men who are intimidated by you, then that's probably not your person. It's just not.
That's one thing I'll say about Brad is he like loves it when I make more money than him some months. You know what I mean? Like he is all for it. Like we'll share revenue numbers with each other. And every time I have a big old month, he's like, that's right. Be my sugar mama. Like it's a joke, you know? So I think you're right. Like the right men are going to cheer you on and celebrate you and be excited for you and not threatened by the fact that you're having success.
Amen. They're going to grow with you. Absolutely. This has been so good. I know we could just talk forever. Indeed. I want to tell people about what you do again, and just kind of give them the invitation if maybe they've been thinking about building an online course, and how can they get in touch with you? Tell us just a little bit more about you and your business.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'd love to connect with anybody here in the audience who either doesn't have an online training, an online program, and would like to create one, or if you have one and it's time for an update on that program, you got to revamp it a little bit. That's exactly what we do. So we're completely done for you. And what I mean by that is, if you think about any kind of online training, online course, we write the video scripts, we build the slide decks, we do the workbooks, the templates, the toolkits, we build your portal, we'll do videography. Like, the sky is the limit. Anything product that you need, we will do it. My whole goal is like, you just get to show up and shine. You know, we just interview you, we talk to you, and poof, we spit out your amazing program that gets people results. So if that's you and you want to talk further, definitely connect with me. But anybody out there who's creating any kind of paid content, I have something called how to make your course as binge worthy as Netflix. And it's got 10 tips on there, and you can get that at Cre8tion.co/Morgan.
Awesome. And we'll put that link in the show notes for you. And Jasmine really is amazing at what she does. And she really cares about all of her clients the same way I care about my clients. So I know with 100% confidence that if this is something you're looking for, she would be an amazing option for you. And yeah, I think you getting to help more people step into the identity that they have for their business or create the course, that's such a gift, because a lot of people just have so many blocks and they would never do it, right? Because it's too hard, there's too many things to do. So you just take all that away for them and support them in doing their thing. So I love it. I love what you do so much.
Well, thank you. Back at you, sister. I wish I knew you like in 2017 when I was in the thick of it.
Yes. Well, this has been so fun, Jasmine. I just have loved having you on. I just always ask my guests one last question, and that is, if you were walking down the street, random person comes up to you and they're asking for your best life advice of the moment, doesn't have to be like all-time best life advice, but what would you say to them today if someone asked you that?
I would say be kind always, because you never know what someone's going through. And I mean, that's the short and sweet of it, but time and time again, I find that the more you give people the benefit of the doubt and trust that they're giving it their best, the more the good karma comes back around.
So true. I love this. And how true is that in our relationships with our partners? Assume
1000%.
they're doing their best. That really goes a long way.
Every time.
Well, Jasmine, thank you for being a guest, and congrats on the engagement. I know I'm just so happy for you. I'm honored to be your friend, and who knows, maybe we'll have you back at some point, but thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you for having me. It's been awesome.
Yes. All right. And everyone, of course, I'm wishing you high self-worth and great relationships. I'll talk to you soon.